Happy 2021. I am so excited to have you here for another Cook with Kris. We are kicking off the new year with a series to start the year off to help you feel more confident in the kitchen, to help you become a more confident cook. So over the next 4 weeks, I am going to share with you guys some basic but really important skills when it comes to cooking and feeling like you can own your kitchen and like cooking just isn't so hard. Because I truly believe that when you have just the basic skills to be able to cook and to be confident in the kitchen, it makes everything happen so much easier and so much more efficient. And I love teaching how to be more efficient in the kitchen because many of us are busy mamas or just busy in general, and we don't have a ton of time to cook. And so let's learn the skills to be more efficient in the kitchen and to just enjoy our time in the kitchen more. So for those of you who don't yet know who I am, I'm Kristen Dovniak. I'm a holistic health coach. I'm also a trained chef. I've been teaching cooking classes for a decade this year. 2011 was the first year I started teaching cooking classes. So it's been a decade, and I love teaching home cooks how to make food taste delicious. And I also love to teach you how to make nutritious food taste delicious too, because I think a lot of us feel like food that's nutrient dense just has to be boring, and that is not the case. So today though, we are gonna start by talking about those basic skills that are just gonna help you, like I said, be more confident and more efficient in the kitchen. I've got a little bit of a weird angle going on today because we're going to start today talking about knife skills. I think so many people are hesitant about cooking or trying new recipes because they're hesitant about trying out new ingredients. And oftentimes the only reason they're hesitant about trying new ingredients other than trying new flavors is because they might not be so confident actually cutting and slicing and dicing, because many of us weren't taught these things. So we might have been handed a knife at some point in the kitchen and just told to cut something without any instruction. And I know that was actually true for me. My mom wasn't a huge cook. My mom's actually upstairs with my kids right now. She wasn't a huge cook. And so she had nothing to teach me when it came to knife skills. So I'm gonna provide that for you guys. I want you guys to feel confident holding a knife. I want you to have kind of a general idea of what knife to use for different tasks. And then I'm just gonna share with you some basic knife cuts today. I am not going to share with you the fancy culinary cuts like the tournée, which honestly I have not done since culinary school, and I probably couldn't even do right now because I haven't practiced it. But I'm going to share with you the things that you are actually going to need to be a more confident cook and a more efficient cook in the kitchen. So first we're going to talk about knives. I'm going to show you how to hold a knife, and then I'm going to share with you guys just some basic cuts for everyday items that you might be cutting now and be proficient at it, but you could probably be better at it. And I'm also gonna share some things with you, like I got a big old Japanese sweet potato that's gonna help you with some kind of odd shaped objects and things like that. I have no idea how long we're gonna go today, but I'm gonna do my best to save it as long as IG lets me so you guys can watch this later. But you know, I don't think it's gonna be that long, but let's do this, okay? If you guys have questions, I will do my best to follow along and answer questions as we go. Sometimes I get caught up in what I'm doing and I'll answer questions at the end. So if you've got any questions, feel free to ask. And if you have questions later on, if you're watching this later on, shoot me a DM. I'm happy to answer them. I love talking cooking. All right, let's talk about knives for just a second, okay? Let's talk about knives in general. So I am a super minimalist in the kitchen. I do not think you need a lot of fancy equipment, or really, you don't really need any fancy equipment to be a good cook, but you do need some good knives. And by good knives, this is what I mean. You need a knife that can do pretty much all of your tasks, and I'll show you the one that I do, the one that I use, okay? That can do pretty much all of the tasks you need it to, just your general kitchen tasks. It needs to be big enough to actually do the tasks you need it to do, and it needs to be comfortable in your hand, and it needs to be sharp. Notice I did not say that your knife needs to be super expensive or the fanciest one on the market. Mine's actually pretty mid-range when it comes to knives. When it comes to knives, it's not like a $400 knife, but it's comfortable in my hand. It feels like a dream, like I'm cutting a cloud when I use it, and I keep it sharp, and it's easy to keep sharp, which is really, really important. So I'm gonna share with you kind of a couple, just like the basic knives and the ones that I think that you should have in your kitchen. Hint, there's only There's only 4. There's only 4 that I think you absolutely need in the kitchen. Okay, so number 1, this is the one I'm talking about. You need a really good chef's knife. Okay, so this is my chef's knife. It's by Global. They don't sponsor me, though You're welcome to, Global. I've been using Global knives for 10 years. Since culinary school, I had an amazing chef. She's a culinary Olympian, and she is pretty small like I am. I'm only 5 feet tall, so her hands are small, just like mine, and these knives are super, super light. If you are looking to invest in a good knife and you feel like the knives that you've used are really heavy and cumbersome, these are amazing. And so they make things just a lot easier, and your wrists don't get as sore when you're chopping. You know what I mean? Like if you're gonna do meal prep or something like that and you're chopping a bunch of things at once, this is a game changer. So my size is the size of my knife is kind of proportionate to my body. I don't feel the need for a 10 or 12 inch knife. That's what I started with, and it was just way too big. So I go with, I believe this is an 8-inch knife. Yeah, so this is an 8-inch knife. This is stainless steel, and it has, you'll notice that the tang is completely connected to the blade. There's no separation here, so it makes it really easy to clean, and it's also really easy to keep sharp. These are Japanese knives. I also have a Santoku knife, which is just a Japanese chef's knife, and they're the ones that have like the little ridges in it. And I mean, it's really just kind of like a personal preference here, but you do want your knife to be big enough to do the bigger tasks that you need to do. So if you're gonna be cutting something like a butternut squash, you do not wanna be cutting a butternut squash with something like this. Please don't do that. You're gonna cut yourself. You are actually less likely to cut yourself if your knife is big enough and if your knife is sharp enough. The sharper the knife, the less likely you are to be injured because the knife is actually doing what it's supposed to do. You are just controlling the knife. You don't want the knife to be slipping around everywhere. And I'll show you how to hold it so you're less likely to cut yourself as well. And that's why so many people are afraid to cut big things and, because they don't necessarily know how to hold their knife or they don't have the right knife for the job. So first and foremost, a good chef's knife, something you can easily keep sharp. And I just use, so let me see, there's a honing blade. So I use a honing blade and literally just, making sure that every couple of days or so, I just hone it, keep it nice and sharp. And then I do have a beautiful knife sharpener. Sorry, my phone's doing that funky thing again where it tries to turn off on me. You can't do that, phone. So I do have a nice sharpener that my father-in-law gave me. That's amazing, that I use probably once every couple of months just to keep my knives nice and sharp. But you can go to a place like Williams-Sonoma or Whole Foods or something like that that will sharpen your knives for you as well. You want to keep them sharp. Number one is the big chef's knife. Oh, you love those knives. You bought them on sale. Oh my gosh, yes. Knives are the best thing to buy when they're on sale because they can be kind of pricey, but they're a worthwhile investment because they literally will last you forever if it's a good knife. And by the way, the reason why I love knives that have the tang and the blade connected is because there's a lot less likelihood that there's like bacteria or anything like that that's gonna get in there that could make them moldy or not last as long. So love a good global knife. And my second favorite knife, and something that isn't like, I don't think that this particular knife is a must-have, but you want something bigger, and then you want something mid-range and comfortable that you can use with just everyday tasks. Something probably big enough to cut something like a carrot or an onion, but maybe not something that you need as big, like that you don't need it for like a butternut squash or something, if that makes sense. So this is a vegetable knife. It's also by Global. This is about 5.5 or 6 inches, and this is just a good mid-sized knife. Again, just like the chef's knife, you just want to keep it nice and sharp, and this is what I use every day, all day, for pretty much every task, except for bread, which I will show you. You also want some sort of a serrated knife. I didn't actually bring my serrated knife with me today, but this is just a serrated bread knife. So for bread and things like that, a serrated knife is really helpful. A lot of people like to cut tomatoes with a serrated knife. I believe that if your knife is sharp enough, you don't need a serrated knife to cut a tomato. You should be able to cut it actually very easily with your sharp chef's knife, but some sort of a serrated knife for things like bread is really helpful. If you don't need bread, you don't need a serrated knife. Honestly, that's really all I use it for. Smaller tasks, something like a paring knife. This is not my paring knife, this is my mom's. But something small like a paring knife is good for smaller tasks, but honestly, I don't use a paring knife a whole ton. Typically, I use those first two knives. And then if you do want to cut something like meat, you're gonna want some sort of like a boning knife. But honestly, you guys, these are my two knives. Okay, so that is 5 knives I just shared with you. I think the only 4 that you should have in your kitchen are a chef's knife, a mid-sized knife, so sometimes it's called a vegetable knife or a utility knife, a paring knife, and a serrated knife. That's all you need. That is all you are gonna need in your kitchen. And so if you are going to invest in knives and good quality knives, get a set of 2 or 3, either get like the set of these 2 or these 2 in the paring knife, or just get them one at a time. Make sure you're comfortable with them. Test them out at a friend's house. If your friend has a knife that you've been eyeing, you want it to feel good in your hand. That makes a world of difference, feeling comfortable with your knife in your hand, okay? All right, so we talked about types of knives, so now let's go, and hopefully you guys can see me while I show you guys this. But let's talk about how to, by the way, today we're gonna primarily focus on the chef's knife because this is the one that you need to have. No more using your paring knife to try and cut a potato. You're gonna cut yourself. It's gonna be really hard on your wrist. It's not worth it, okay? Promise me. All right, so let's talk about how we're actually going to hold our knife. Okay, what's right, A or B? Have you guys ever seen a knife held like this before? Okay, most people hold their knives, and you guys, I've been teaching cooking classes for 10 years. Most people hold their knives back here, and they're like afraid. They're like, I'm gonna cut myself. So they're like way back behind the knife. But you're way more likely to cut yourself when you like can't even see where your fingers are. Okay, so we wanna make sure that when we hold our knife, we are in control of our knives. You know when you're learning how to drive and whoever's teaching you how to drive had to remind you that you are actually in control of the car, that most of us get nervous because we're like, the car is gonna crash. And it's like, no, you're in control of the car. And so as long as you learn how to be in control of the car and be confident driving, same thing with a knife. I just want you to feel confident holding your knife and being able to use that knife, okay? So you're in control of your knife. What does that mean? You don't want to be holding it all the way up here, okay? You also do not hold it up here. You don't want to hold it back here because you don't have control. It's way easier for a knife to flop around like that. And you also don't want to have your finger on the top here. The best way to control your knife is to have your forefinger, your first finger, curled on one side, right at the edge, right here. Okay, so this is just knife parts real quick. This is the tang. This is it's usually called the spine, okay? But the top of the blade, the spine, and then this is the blade. I'm not gonna touch that. So the tang is the top of the handle, okay? This whole thing is the handle. So you wanna make sure that you are holding it right at the edge of the tang, okay? Your thumb is going to be on one side, and your first finger is gonna be on the other side. It's gonna feel awkward at first. Your wrist is just kind of resting on the top here. Instead of trying to control it with this one little finger, this little finger it's not gonna help you control your knife very well, okay? This little finger does not have as much control as you think it does, but your whole hand has a ton of control, and chances are, you're holding this with your dominant hand. So you're gonna have a ton of control when you go to chop something. So let me just go ahead and let me give you an example. Actually, I'm gonna grab the celery because it'll be easier for you guys to see. So if I'm holding it back here, if I'm holding it all the way back here and I try and just cut this out, I don't even know how to hold it wrong after 10 years, you guys, but when I hold it back here, it kind of falls off like that, right? Okay, so let's hold it the right way. Thumb on one side, finger on the other side. We're gonna flip it around to the other side, okay? And I'll show you the rocking motion I just used here too, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna press down. My knife didn't move, okay? I'm in control of my knife, and you should be in control of your knife too. So the motion that you're gonna use when you are cutting your knife is the exact one I just showed you. You want to rock the boat, okay? You wanna rock your knife. So what we're gonna do, I've got my little celery here. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna start with the tip of the blade. We're gonna start with the tip of the blade, and we're gonna put it on the cutting board first, okay? By the way, let's just quick cutting board etiquette. You want a cutting board that is firm and that is actually sturdy and is gonna stick to your cutting surface. So either put a wet paper towel down on the bottom or make sure it has grips on it. Okay, that being said, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna take the tip of our blade and we're gonna put it on the cutting board first. Okay, remember we're holding our knife, gripping it really well. We're gonna press down and forward, okay? So if you're at home, if you're like in your kitchen right now or later on tonight, I want you to practice this. I want to practice. This is not great for my knife, but it's okay. I just sharpened it. You're gonna go ahead and you're gonna put the tip of your knife down, you're gonna press, and you're just gonna rock forward. They literally made us do this in culinary school like over and over and over and over again just to get used to it. So look, I can look at you and do this, and please don't, I really hope I don't cut myself. We're gonna use these for soup later, so none of these vegetables are going to go to waste. Okay, so how do you prevent from cutting your other fingers when you are chopping something? Okay, you're gonna use what everyone in the culinary world calls it. However, my daughter loves to say the claw, like in Toy Story. Okay, am I aging myself by talking about the first Toy Story? Probably. Okay, so you're gonna take your hand, your other hand, this one's holding your knife really well. You're gonna take your other hand and you're gonna claw just like you're a bear. And you're gonna go ahead and put it on top of whatever you're cutting. Okay, so I want you to see this. I'm gonna hold my hand up here. This is my cutting board. You're gonna put your hand on top, okay? And you don't wanna see your nails. You wanna push your fingers forward so you don't see your nails anymore, okay? No cutting off your manicure. You wanna cut with your fingers forward. So you are cutting against your second knuckle, not your first, okay? And this is gonna take some practice, but you're gonna be able to practice and you can slowly pull back your hand as you're cutting. It takes time to become efficient in the kitchen, okay? It takes time to be able to actually, learn the rocking motion and to hold the knife in a way that feels a little awkward at first. But when you become efficient at this, it is going to take you half the time to chop your vegetables, okay? So eventually, you're gonna get to the point, I'm gonna cut these into smaller pieces, we'll talk about that in a second. Eventually, you're gonna get to the point where it's just second nature to use the rocking motion, to use the claw, to pull your hand back. It's gonna be awkward at first. It might take you a couple weeks of chopping vegetables to get used to it, but this is the number one thing you can do for being more efficient in the kitchen is learning just proper chopping technique. Okay, so you're gonna go home tonight or you're gonna be in your kitchen tonight and we're gonna hold our knife, grip on one side, and then forefinger on the other side, tip of the knife down, rocking motion. The only exception to this is if you're gonna be chopping something. So this is for slicing, dicing, any of that. Now chopping is not something I would ever do with cucumbers, this is celery, with celery, but chopping is basically if you're gonna go like, if you're gonna do that, which honestly I only use for mushrooms. Typically you're not gonna chop things other than mushrooms. So you wanna use that motion, okay? All right, you just wanna kind of keep the tip of that knife down on top of that cutting board as much as possible using that rocking motion. So yes, it will take a little bit of time, but I promise it's gonna make you so much more efficient in the kitchen. All right, so those are your basic, that's how you're gonna hold your knife. Those are the knives that you're gonna need. Let's go ahead and let's talk about some of the basic knife cuts, the ones that you are actually going to use, okay? No tournays around here. I'll teach you a brunoise, but I mean, that's actually also unlikely that you're gonna use a brunoise unless you're making like something fancy for a fancy date night or something like that. Let's start with slicing and dicing. All right, I've got some carrots here because carrots are something that oftentimes we cut, and you're probably pretty efficient at cutting carrots if you cut vegetables in your kitchen on a regular basis. If you're making mirepoix, which is carrot, celery, and onion, it's the start of pretty much all soups and stews and French cooking, and it's also, when you mince it, it's sofrito in Italian cooking, so you've probably cooked with this before, but I wanna help it feel a lot easier to cut carrots. And then you're gonna be able to extrapolate this to pretty much every other vegetable except for rounded vegetables, which I will show you in a minute. And then of course, we'll talk about onions too. All right, so let's talk about our carrots. First of all, we're gonna peel our carrots. Now, personal preference, whether you wanna trim the carrot before or after, I just kinda like to do it before. Then the ends are gone. I keep a scrap bowl typically over to the side. Right now I have my water because I'm talking. But when you peel carrots, now, there are chefs that will tell you to peel like this. By the way, this is the only peeler I ever recommend. This type of peeler. You can use whatever one you want, but this one's like $7 on Amazon. And it's by the brand Kuhn. Everyone's gonna ask me, I know. Okay, so there are some chefs that'll tell you to peel like this, but that's a really easy recipe to slice your fingers. I worked at a vegetarian soup company for about a year in my early culinary days while I was like starting to become a personal chef, and I didn't have a ton of work. And so I worked at this really cool vegetarian soup place. And basically what we did all day long was peel vegetables and chop them for these soups. We made broth, we made all these delicious soups. I learned a ton there. But they taught me how to peel the right way and the most efficient way. So here's what you're gonna do. If it is something that you need to be like sturdy, then you wanna just brace yourself against the cutting board. You can also do this above a bowl if you want to, if you're comfortable with it. So it's whatever you're most comfortable with, brace it or above. But basically you are going to go from halfway all the way down, okay? Holding your peeler, whatever way is comfortable for you. And you're gonna peel down like that, okay? And you're just gonna turn it. And it's gonna fly everywhere. And it is so easy. I'm not really paying attention to it. I'm trying to look at you guys. But when you are actually paying attention to it, it's done in like no time. Way easier that way. So peel away from you. You're not gonna cut yourself, and it's gonna be way more efficient, okay? So I've got my carrot. Let's talk about dicing carrots, and let's talk about a couple of the basic knife cuts, okay? So if you are just going to go ahead and dice a carrot for soup, let me see. I gotta go up a little. Let's make sure you guys can actually see what I'm doing over here. I'm at a little bit of an awkward angle. We're gonna do our best here. Okay, so if you're gonna dice something for soup, you're literally just gonna start by cutting it in half. We already trimmed it, we already peeled it, you're gonna cut it in half, okay? Tip down, slice it in half, and then all you're gonna do is you're just gonna slice that as a quarter. So you're gonna slice it lengthwise, same thing. You're just gonna turn it, tip down, and then if you just want little pieces like this, you are totally welcome to just go ahead and make little half moons. Pull your fingers back as you go. Super easy, okay? You've got diced carrots. Easy, easy, easy. Don't worry, I'm gonna show you a couple different ways. Other than that, if you want them a little bit bigger, same thing. Okay, now, if you want your carrots to be a little bit more even, then we can go into making sure that we are actually dicing our carrots well. So let me just grab another carrot over here. We need several carrots for this. I'm gonna show you that peeling technique again. So there are two basic cuts, okay? When you're talking to vegetables, there's slicing and there's dicing. And here's what you need to know. Slicing turns into dicing, okay? So if you know how to slice well, you can dice well. And it's really just about the size that you slice that is going to determine the size of your dice, okay? So size of your slice, size of your dice. So when you are dicing something like a carrot, these are not very big carrots, so this is not the easiest. We're gonna go ahead, and this is something, if you really want it to be like the perfect, like a perfect square or close to perfect, I promise you mine will not be perfect, but if you want it to be close to perfect little squares, so there's small dice, there's medium dice, and there's large dice. Your small dice are about 1/4 of an inch, your small dice are about 1/4 of an inch, your medium dice are about 1/2 inch, and you're at about 3/4 of an inch for a large dice. But large dice is like, you know, maybe if you're dicing like fruit or a pineapple or something, typically you're gonna use small or medium for most of the tasks you wanna do. So you're gonna just slice it in half, just like we did before, okay? We just showed you just your basic dice, okay? Your basic carrot dice. Your only goal here is that you want, I forgot to mention this, but this is important. Your only goal here is that everything is around the same size, so it cooks at the same rate. When you are cutting food, that is your goal. Your goal is not perfection unless you are trying to work at a 5-star restaurant, which I'm not. I'm just a busy mom who wants to get dinner on the table, but I also want my things to cook, my vegetables or whatever I'm chopping, to cook at the same rate. So we wanna make sure that we have the skills to be able to cut things around the same size so that we're not, I'm dropping things, that's fine. So that when we are cooking it, we're not like picking up one piece of the potato and it's hard and the other piece is like super soft. We want that consistency, okay? It's gonna make our meals taste better too, because texture is a big part of flavor. So how are we gonna make it a really nice dice? We are going to slice off the edges. And whenever you are cutting something that has a round edge, you're gonna slice off the edge. I just sliced off a little bit here. You can save this for stock or for soup. Again, in my bowl over there. And we are gonna put the flat edge down because we don't want to cut ourselves. So we want a sturdy foundation there, right? And then we're gonna do that for the other 3 sides, okay? So just a little slice on the side there, if you can see me. There we go. I wish I could move this back further. I think that's as far back as we're going. Okay, just gonna make sure. We're gonna turn it so the flat side is down. We're gonna go ahead, slice that so we've got a flat edge there, okay? And then one more little one. This is mostly flat over here. We're not trying to win any competitions here. We're just trying to dice, okay? So now I have pretty much, there we go. I've got pretty much 4, I've got this like rectangular shape here. I've got flat edges. So if we want to cut a small dice, then we are going to slice small. So let's go ahead and let's start with that. There's no way in this little carrot I could get large dice, but it would just basically be like this. So we're gonna do small and we're gonna do medium. In order to do small dice, we're just gonna slice it. So we've got that flat edge down. We've got 4 flat edges now, so you can choose whatever edge you want. And we're gonna go ahead and slice about 1/4 of an inch, okay? I don't have a ruler, so we're not going for perfection. And I'm just making sure I'm slicing that all the way down. But you're just gonna use the same slice I just mentioned. You're just gonna slice it down, okay? So now we have our rectangle here. In order to make this slice, and you can just do that the whole way, whatever you're cutting, and I'll show you how to do that with a potato in just a little bit. But from there, all you're gonna do is, well, we need to have another 1/4 inch piece, right? We've got a rectangle, so we're gonna cut this in half. And then we have 2 1/4, I'm doing this super slow so you guys can see, okay? These are called bâtonnet. They're like French fries, right? So we've got two pretty small or medium. Okay, if you want it even smaller, you can go even smaller. That's your julienne, which I'll show you in just a sec. But this is like your small to medium slices. And then to dice it, you've got your slices, okay? And you're just gonna go the opposite direction, okay? And you're just gonna go ahead, move along, use that rocking motion. Can you see that? And then they are all basically the same size. If you want it medium, you're just gonna make it a little bit of a bigger slice to start. If you can see that. They're all about the same size, okay? So if you want it medium, you're just gonna do it a little bit bigger. So julienne, let's talk about julienne. If you see something that is julienne, you can julienne pretty much anything. You just wanna make your slice about half the size. So we're gonna go ahead and slice it really thin. Okay, nice and thin. You see how thin that is? And then we're gonna turn it to the side just like we did. And then we're gonna slice it really thin on the other side, okay? The more comfortable you are with your knife, and this is not perfect. See, I got one really nice big piece here. But you know what? Again, we're not trying to win any competitions over here. We're just cooking at home. So we can just go back and slice that again. And then no one would ever know, okay? You have your julienne, which are your just really thin, whoops, I'm gonna drop them all now. Your really thin slices. So if you've ever seen brunoise, which is your smallest dice, which I don't know, I don't think any of my cookbooks at home that I actually use recommend or require you to make something brunoise, but let's just go all out, okay? I showed you the small, how to make it medium, let's make it really small. A brunoise is just a julienne that's been turned into a dice. It is going to be your smallest dice next to a mince. And we are just gathering them all up, just like we did. This will be easier to show you with the potato, not the brunoise, but the dice. And we are just gonna go ahead, and we have our little tiny little dice. This is like a regular size brunoise. You can definitely do a smaller brunoise or a mince, which I'll show you later. Now that I've made a huge mess, okay, those are your basic cuts when it comes to a carrot. You have your rough chop, okay, or your rough dice, I should say. It's not a chop, but you have your rough dice, okay? You have your small dice, which is where you're just gonna make the slice, small or medium, where you're just gonna make the slices, either small or medium slices. I've got another one right here. And then we're just gonna, in order to dice them, we're gonna slice them in half, turn it around. Sorry, I want you guys to see me, okay? And you just want to work on cutting as evenly as you can. You see that? So that they cook evenly. That's your only goal. We're not looking for perfection. We just want them the same size, so you're cooking them evenly. So when you are slicing them, you want them all about the same size. Now, what I didn't show you, I'm trying to put these all in a pile over here. What I didn't show you, and what I'm gonna show you in just a second with the potato, is if you're doing more than just a tiny little carrot, you're gonna wanna stack these on top of each other, and that is what is going to, that's how you're gonna dice like more than just a tiny little piece of a carrot. Cause like this is not enough for soup, right? And you're like, great, Kris, I'm glad I can cut a carrot perfectly, but how am I actually gonna get dinner on the table? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about cutting something that is round. So I gave you the example with a carrot, which is what most people start with when it comes to culinary school, or they come to one of my cooking classes. You're gonna start by learning with a carrot. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and cut something that is round, like a potato. This is a Japanese sweet potato here. Same thing as a carrot. We're gonna cut the top and the bottom off, okay? And we're gonna peel it. So if you're just hopping on, this is my peeling technique. I've been using it for the better part of a decade, and no matter what any of those famous chefs tell you, I promise you this is more efficient. I spent all day long peeling vegetables for a good amount of time, and then when I was a personal chef too. Lots of vegetables, and it's just easier, so much easier. Whoops, it's a potato, so sometimes there's edges. It's so much easier when you actually just know how to do simple things that actually aren't so simple. When I teach people, when I'm teaching them live or in person in a cooking class, I'm never like, you don't know how to do that? Because I didn't know how to do any of these things either, and I would not have if I hadn't gone to culinary school. If you haven't taken a cooking class, a lot of these things, these are not just inherent things that we know. They're things that are learned. So if you're learning anything new, I'm so glad. Let's go ahead and cut this potato. So all I did is top and bottom off, and you could do that after you peel, but I just find it easier to peel that way. We've peeled it, and now just like with our carrot, because a carrot is slightly round, right? We wanna make sure that we have a flat edge because we wanna be safe. So we're gonna go ahead and make a flat edge on the side. Okay, we got our flat edge, and then we're going to secure it down. That's our foundation, the flat edges down. So now let's take what we learned on the carrot and we're gonna bring it to something a little bit bigger, and we're gonna go ahead and we are going to slice and dice this potato. So how big do you want your dice to be? Okay, so that is going to determine how big your slice is gonna be. So, all right, if we're going for perfection over here, or close to it, then we wanna cut off all 4 edges and make them flat, but we're not going for that today. I'm putting these in a chicken soup, so it's all good. So I'm gonna go ahead and just make a small slice over here. And if you just like with the carrot, okay? Same thing, just different vegetable. Just like with the carrot, we're just gonna take it, put its flat edge down. We're gonna slice it. Okay, however thick you want, but hey, look, fries! Wedge fries. If you just want something nice and rough, you're gonna slice it and then you're just gonna group them all together. Remember, your goal is just that they are the same size, okay? You're gonna go the opposite direction using that rocking motion. Most important things that you know here are actually how to hold the knife, how to chop, and then how to make sure that they are about the same size so they cook evenly, okay? So that's your rough chop with your potato, all right? And then in order to make more slices, so let's say we're gonna make fries, okay? We're just gonna go ahead and we're gonna want to cut these same width, okay? We want them all to be about the same width. And what am I doing? I didn't mention this earlier, but what am I doing when I'm going to cut this? Because this is obviously a lot harder to cut, and I'm not a huge person. It's a lot harder to cut than a carrot, right? I'm just putting my weight into it, okay? Just putting my back into it. And that's the nice thing about being able to hold a knife like this. Obviously, don't try this at home. Hold on to your knife, okay? But I'm just putting my back into it, okay? Trying to do this really slow is really hard. I'm just putting my back into it, and because I'm holding that knife nice and secure, my body weight is helping to cut that. Remember, I'm in control of the knife. You're in control of the knife is not in control of you. There's no reason to be afraid of your knife. Don't swing it around though. Okay, so we have slices that are approximately the same size. Remember, sorry, it's a white sweet potato, so it's a little brown there, but we're not worried about it. The goal here is that they're about the same size, okay? I'm just gonna say that over and over again. They're about the same size, so then we can stack them. And however many you wanna stack on top of each other is just however many you're comfortable with. But let's go ahead and make these into fries. So if we wanted them to be more rectangular fries, we could cut the edges off, save those for stock later on. And then we're just gonna cut them, okay? We're just gonna slice them. So we're stacking them, and stacking them is gonna save you so much time instead of doing them one at a time. And we're just gonna slice them, and these are medium dice that I'm doing right now, which is like typically what you want for something like a fry, okay? And you might want them a little bit thinner, then you can make them a little bit thinner, okay? But they're all about the same size. Again, skinny cut fries, you wanna make them smaller. But that's basically it. So how do we make this into a dice? This would be a medium dice because I sliced them medium. But if I want to make them into a dice, which I'm going to do because I'm going to put them in soup, then I'm just going to stack them on top of each other just like I did before. No different, okay? Different vegetables, same technique. That's the beauty about having knife skills, is it's the same vegetable, different technique. Different vegetables, same technique. There are going to be different vegetables that are going to require different techniques, but for most of what you need to do in the kitchen, this is all you need. Okay, so we're going to turn these into dice. So we're going to still use that claw, okay? I know I've got to come back here a little bit. We're going to use that claw. And you guys can't see this, but this is like balanced very precariously over here, which is why I am I'm moving very slowly here. All right, we're just gonna dice these. We're gonna use that claw. Whoops. And I sometimes even lose some of my potatoes. Usually I'm not balanced so precariously on the edge of the counter. All right, your goal is, again, just that they're all about the same size, okay? And you're stacking them, so you're doing more than one thing at a time, and you're not feeling like you're like doing one slice at a time, which is just gonna take you so much longer. All right, so that was our slice, our medium slice. So that turned into our dice, okay? So we had our French fries, our bâtonnet, and then we had our medium dice. If you wanted this smaller, same thing. You could make this into a smaller dice. So what happens if you get to like this point is probably okay. But what happens if you get to the point where you're like at the edge and you're like, I don't know about this. I'm feeling kind of like this is gonna fall over. What am I gonna do? You're just gonna turn it on its side. And you're gonna do the same exact thing again. Okay, and you're just gonna turn it on its side. You've got the edge here, and then I'm just gonna do that rough chop again, okay? You would use that for stock or discard it if you don't want the rough chop, if you want it to be more of those squares. But again, we're not trying to impress anyone or win any awards. We're just cooking dinner. And then you have that edge again where you can do the same thing. If you want to do small dice, then you just want to slice it thinner than I just did with the medium dice. Slice it again, okay? And then we're gonna turn it. And you have that control over the knife. You're holding the knife the right way so that it feels efficient and smooth, and it doesn't feel hard, because cooking doesn't need to be hard, okay? This is the first step to making cooking easier, is having these skills, okay? So we have our small dice. Let me just go ahead and share these with you real quick, because we're already at 2:36. So we have our sweet potatoes, which are our small dice right here. Let's see if you can see them. There we go. We've got our rough chop here, which are just a little bit more rough, okay? Got our rough chop. So we've got our rough chop. We have our more even right there. I just want to make sure you guys can see them. We have our medium dice over here. And if we wanted them larger, and again, they're not perfect, right? We're not winning awards. But we are winning in the kitchen because this is so much faster. All right, and then we've got our rough chopped celery over here, which is literally just the same thing as the carrot. You're just slicing it into, let me show you that really quick. Okay, celery is super easy. And I really should move these before I do this, but we're just gonna go top and bottom, just like that. Slice it in half, slice it into slices, just like that, okay? You're in slices now, and then you'll end up, so I don't hurt myself, with just your basic dice right here, okay? So we've got our rough chopped or rough diced celery, put that there. We have our small diced carrots, okay? And again, you can either rough chop them if you're just using them for a soup, but if you want them a little bit more even, like you're roasting them or something like that, then you wanna make sure you are taking the edges off and making it into a square. And then if you want to julienne it and slice it really, really thin, you can do that. And then you can turn it into a brunoise if you want to be fancy and put something on top of your soup, whether it's, for a holiday or a date night or something like that. Those are the only times that I would use a brunoise, because it takes a while and I don't really have a lot of time for a brunoise as a busy mom, but that's okay. I want you guys to at least know how to do it. So the last thing I want to teach you guys today, in the future, I'll talk to you guys about a mince. So I talked about this actually in the last class I did before the holidays, where I talked about how to chop herbs and how to chop garlic. I'll show you guys that soon. I don't think I'm gonna have enough time today, but I know everyone wants to know how to cut an onion. And I did go over this really briefly in my class in the fall. But if you haven't seen that, then it's time to learn. All right, so I'm gonna try and adjust my camera a little bit here because I don't wanna be precarious with this one. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and chop an onion. First thing, I just kind of peel the outside just a little bit, but it's way easier to peel when you slice it in half. So first thing I do is we want that flat edge, right? So I'm just gonna cut the bottom off just a little bit, okay? And you are welcome to cut a little bit of the top off here too, but here's the key. When you're dicing an onion, all right, if you're slicing it, it's different, but if you're dicing an onion, you wanna make sure that you keep the root intact, okay? So that means you still wanna see this little part of the onion bulb there, and I will show you why in just a second, okay? So you wanna make sure that root is intact. We can go ahead, we can slice it. We want flat edge down, okay? Please don't ever cut your onion like this. Please don't, you're gonna hurt yourself. So please don't cut your onion like that. Flat edge down, okay? And then we're just gonna cut it in half. Put your back into it, we're gonna cut it in half. Now we have 2 halves of an onion. So in order to slice it, if you're gonna slice it, then you just wanna go ahead and make sure that you cut that root off, and then slicing it, and I'll just show you really quick, slicing it, you're just going to follow along these beautiful little lines that the onion already has laid out for you. So if you're gonna slice it, you're gonna use that same claw motion, and you're just gonna go along like that, okay? If you wanted to do it the other way, obviously, now this is really small, but if you wanna go the other way, you are also welcome to do that. Make sure you are still using the same technique where you are putting the knife on the cutting board first. So you can slice it just like that. Some of these are gonna be stuck together because the root is still intact, but the reason for that is because I wanna teach you how to dice an onion. So a couple things when it comes to dicing onions. Everyone's afraid of onions because they're like, I'm gonna cry. Okay, sharper the knife, the less you cry. First and foremost, keep your knife sharp, okay? Second thing is you wanna make sure that you are messing with it as little as possible because the juices are what is going to, the aromatic compounds are what are going to make you cry. And I know that I have kind of like built-in onion goggles over here, but I promise you that having a sharp knife and actually learning how to slice it the right way is gonna be way less tears. Now I'm messing with my onion, so if I've got some tears, that's why. So we've already sliced our onion in half, the root is intact, and the beautiful thing about onions, okay, is that they naturally have, let me show you, these beautiful little ridges along them, and that's what we're gonna use to direct us when we are either gonna slice it like I just showed you or when we're gonna dice it. So we're gonna take the tip of our knife, remember we're still holding that knife the right way, we're gonna take the tip of our knife and we're gonna bring it as close to the root as we are comfortable with, still using that claw, okay? And we're gonna slice into the knife. I hope you guys can see this. We're gonna slice into the knife, into the onion, okay? Again, I'm going very slowly here, but you will become much more proficient at this once you practice it, okay? You're gonna go as close to the root, but not slicing through the root, okay? So see how it stays together when you do this? And if you want your onion slices thicker, then you're just gonna make these slices thicker, just like with any of our other dice, okay? So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna go all the way to the root, but not actually slicing through the root. We're gonna go all the way down and then all the way to the edge, that one last slice, just be careful. Okay, so here is where, in culinary school, I got a little bit of something on this onion. In culinary school and most cooking classes, they're gonna tell you to go ahead and put your hand on the top of your onion, nice and flat, and slice it halfway. And I can't for the life of me figure out why that is necessary. I don't think it's necessary. So take it from me. I've never had anyone come back after a cooking class and been like, Kris, you ruined my onion cutting forever. The only thing I've ever heard is cutting onions is so much easier. So I just slice one way and then slice the other way, and it's totally fine. It works out. Okay, so we slice one way and then we're gonna turn it sideways, okay? And we're gonna slice the other way. And however thick you want these is how thick you're gonna slice. Again, okay? And then you guys, magic. Magic. I really should be looking at the onion and not you guys. Okay, you go all the way down to the end as far as you can go. And then once you get down to the end, you are welcome to go ahead and just give a little chop over here, a little chop over here. And then again, if you have one or two pieces that are a bit bigger, just even it out. Your onion slices, now I'm gonna start to cry because I'm like messing with it. But they're all the same size and they're ready to go in your soup. Super easy. Oh, I promised you guys I wouldn't cry. Okay, so I'm messing with the onion and I just told you that if you don't, as long as you don't mess with the onion, you won't cry, but here we are, you guys. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead. So what I shared with you guys was how to cut carrots, how to cut celery, how to cut onions. So now you have mirepoix. I'm crying. I'm just so happy to be here. Also dramatic. I did musical theater in high school, and so now I just teach cooking classes and I get to be fully dramatic. Anyone who knows my daughter knows this is where she gets it from. So now I'm just gonna go ahead and, so sweet potatoes, I don't think I mentioned that too. So at this point, you guys should feel confident enough to go home and practice a couple things. So this is what I want you, I mean, you guys are probably in your home right now, but if you're not, tonight, when you're gonna go cook your dinner, this is what I want you guys to practice. First and foremost, whatever you're cooking tonight, I want you to find the knife in your kitchen that you are most comfortable with now. You don't have to go out and buy a new knife tonight, but I want you to choose the knife that you are most comfortable with. Let me go ahead and grab a tissue so I'm not weirding you guys out. 1 second. Okay. This is real life live. This is what it's like. Okay. First thing I want you guys to do is find the knife in your kitchen you are most comfortable with. Second thing I want you to do is I want you to go into that, like, the knife, what are they called? Knife block that you got for your wedding that you have never taken this out of. I know there's some of you out there. And you're gonna go ahead and you are going to, make sure my knife doesn't have anything on it. You're gonna hone your knife. You will probably not be able to sharpen it tonight unless you have a sharpener, but you're gonna hone your knife, and this is how I hone it because that whole, like, that freaks me out. So I do it the way that's easy. And you are allowed to do it the way that's easy too. Okay, so you're gonna hone your knife so it's at least sharper than it was. when you go to chop something, you are going to practice your finger on one side and your forefinger on the other side. And then you are going to practice let me grab something to chop, the rocking motion when you cut something, okay? So you're going to put whatever it is down on the cutting board. You're going to put the tip of your knife down, okay? First, we're going to press down and slice. Remember, you are in control of your knife, okay? Your knife is not in control of you. You do not need to be afraid of your knife. You are in control of your knife, and I'm just doing a little rough dice over here. And then whatever you're cooking tonight, I want you to practice slicing. I want you to practice dicing, which is just slicing, sliced again, and then turned and diced. Way easier than this is what I see most people do. Is, you take a hunk of, they're like, and it's like this, and then they're cutting big chunks, and then they're like, those seem kind of big, and that seems kind of big, and then they're like taking it one piece at a time. If this is you, there's no judgment. Again, I've seen everything because I've been teaching classes for so long. So, did you get to the same end result? Yes, but it took twice as long. If you want to talk about being more efficient in the kitchen, it took twice as long as actually slicing that in 2 pieces, okay? Cutting it in half, and then again, this is rough, and then I also have twice as much here too, by the way, as what I had over here. So, I want you to practice tonight. I want you to practice holding the knife. I want you to practice the actual rocking motion of the knife. I want you to practice the claw with your other hand because we're not cutting ourselves, okay? Not after Cook with Kris. I want you guys to practice cutting an onion if you're cutting an onion tonight and actually using the technique of keeping the root intact, slicing it in half, and dicing it one way, or by slicing it one way and then the other way, because it's gonna make it so much easier. And even though I did cry, it was because I'm like squishing my onion and playing with it. If you're using a sharp knife and you're using a technique where you can just slice it really quickly, it's not gonna be a big deal. And I want you ultimately to practice, okay? So practice using the right motion with your hand, practice holding the knife. It's gonna feel awkward at first, but it needs to feel awkward for a little while before you get comfortable and before it helps you to become more efficient in the kitchen. And just having these basic skills are gonna help you to become so much more efficient in the kitchen because you're not gonna be slicing each thing individually. You're gonna use the techniques like slicing it and stacking them and cutting them all together. You're gonna be able to cut the onion that much quicker. And food is just gonna feel less stressful. And that's my whole goal for you guys, that food in general feels less stressful. And that's one of the reasons why I think I love teaching cooking classes and why I've loved teaching cooking classes over the years, other than really teaching people that nutritious food can also be delicious, is just making them feel more ease in the kitchen. I knew that when I was a teenager and I first started teaching myself how to cook, because like I said, my mom didn't grow up like cooking a whole ton, and she always made us home cooked food for the most part. I mean, we ate a lot of, packaged foods too, but, she did cook us meals at home, but she didn't really have a lot of those techniques taught to her. And so I didn't really have a lot of those taught to me. And once I started learning them and once I started becoming more comfortable in the kitchen, it was just so much more of a joyful experience. And even though I was going to school for nutrition, I always knew that I wanted to take some sort of culinary course, which ended up being I ended up fully going to culinary school, after school, becoming a chef, working as a personal chef for a few years, and then circling back to doing what I do now, which is a combination of both. But I knew that I wanted to do some sort of culinary course at some point in my life because I knew that actually teaching people through food makes them feel more comfortable and less stressed in the kitchen. And so that's what I hope for all of you guys. So today was just the basic knife skills, okay? Slicing, dicing, onions, carrots, celery, potatoes, how to hold the knife, the basic knives I think you should have, which by the way, just going back to that, is just your chef's knife, some sort of utility or vegetable knife, a paring knife, and a serrated knife. That's it. That's all I think you need. And if you don't eat bread, then you don't even need a serrated knife, but why wouldn't you eat bread? Okay, so that's all I'm teaching you guys today. But next week, I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna share with you some more tips for confident cooking. I'm gonna talk about different cooking techniques, which is a lot more interesting than it sounds. I'm gonna share with you guys moist cooking methods and dry cooking methods and how to make your food taste really delicious by using the right cooking methods. So I'm going to talk to you guys about that next week. And I'll let you guys know what we're going to talk about the week after that because I have it planned, but I can't remember and I don't want to tell you something that's not true. So I will be back here. 2 o'clock is going to be our time on Thursday afternoon. So 2 o'clock every Thursday, I'm going to be here live sharing with you. The whole month of January is going to be my confident cooking series. So we're going to go through knife skills. We're going to go through cooking methods. We're going to go through flavor basics. We're going to make you feel really confident with the basics in the kitchen. And then in February, we're going to go beyond basics. So if you guys have any questions for me whatsoever, you can either ask them now or you can come back and send me a DM. I'm happy to answer questions. And if you have any specific requests for specific things that you want me to cook or teach you how to cook, like I said, the first couple of months of the year, I just want to teach you guys the basics. I want you to be in my kitchen as if like we are like right here, as if I'm doing a cooking class in your kitchen, being able to teach you guys the basics. So then we can go into some of the more advanced, some of the more fun stuff, and you can feel really good in the kitchen and try some new foods this year and really just bring more joy into the kitchen. So thank you all so much for being here, whether you're watching this now or hopefully watching this later. I'm saying hopefully because let's fingers crossed that I can actually save this and share this with you guys later. I appreciate all of you and I'm so excited to share with you more. I'm excited to share with you cooking basics and beyond, and then some really good recipes later on this year as well. So I will see you guys next week here at 2 o'clock Eastern. Shoot me a DM if you have any suggestions or questions or any of that. Let me just go through really quick to make sure I don't think I see any specific questions. No, I think we're good. All right, friends, have a beautiful rest of your Thursday, and I will see you next week.